Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to this last webinar of this autumn series of Health and Wellbeing webinars for our staff. And today's webinar is on compassionate resilience. I am Catherine Cox from our staff Health and Wellbeing team from HR. And today's session is going to be led by Lawrence Wintergold, who I will allow to introduce himself in a moment. And I'm just going to say that today's session is being recorded so that people who couldn't make today are able to watch it back. So feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions or make any comments you would like to during the webinar. We can look at those at the end, but please don't add any personal identifying information because it is being recorded. And I just want to say that this session is short, it's only half an hour, and we have kept it intentionally short because we know how busy everybody is. But I would encourage you to really use this time to reflect on your well-being and the well-being of your colleagues. Turn your emails off and just use this time to really think about how you can benefit your own well-being and try to take something new from this webinar. So I'm now going to pass over to Lawrence to start the session.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. Good morning, everybody. Yes, welcome to the final Staff Health and Wellbeing webinar of this year. And after such a year, it's probably quite fitting that we're talking about compassion and resilience, the things that have got us through to where we are now. As Catherine said, my name's Lawrence Wintergold. I'm an occupational therapist. I've worked in mental health for 30 years. I'm a mental health first aid trainer, and I'm also a recovery college tutor. And one of the courses that I teach along with a peer is our Resilience in a Nutshell. And I think that's probably how I managed to get an invite to talk to you today. I'm also going to be talking to you about my personal experience of resilience, as I've had a year, probably like many of you, which has involved some loss, some illness and some difficult things. There are facts and research support the things that I'm saying, and if you're a person who likes those kinds of things, there's some links at the end, and I can send you more information if you'd like that too. And I'm going to do a shameless plug for the Recovery College, because next year we're going to be running some more courses and staff are fully welcome to attend these. They're free of charge, and the ones I think might be of particular interest next year are our Resilience in a Nutshell 90-minute workshop. There'll also be a 4-week course on resilience and also how to get a good night's sleep. And I think I'll be going on that one too. So what are we going to be doing over the next 20 minutes or so? Catherine, if you can forward the slide. So we're going to be looking at what is resilience, what is compassion, then what is compassion resilience, what is compassionate resilience. They all sound very similar, but we'll make those clear. Some strategies for you to take away, to consider. So these are just things for you to think about. So take away some ideas and maybe see if they work for you. And also signpost you to some resources. So this is going to be quite a whistle-stop tour. As I say, I hope you pick up a couple of useful things and a couple of key messages. Catherine, can you go forward, please? And on to the next slide. Today you, and back again, sorry. Perfect, thank you. You even get a free Latin lesson today. So resilience comes from the Latin, which means to bounce back. So resiliens with an S on the end is the Latin, and it means to bounce back. And resilience can be used in all sorts of ways. So sometimes it applies to materials. So some materials are thought to be resilient. If you think about a bouncy ball, that has resilience. Sometimes it applies to organizations. We talk about organizations being resilient to things that happen to them. Ecosystems, if you think about the barrier reef and other ecosystems, about resilient to things like climate change and pollution. But today we're going to be thinking about your own personal resilience. If you Google resilience, you get over 180 million results, and there's a large number of models and theories and definitions. But what we do in Recovery College, we use these two images to try and pull out some of the core messages. So if you look at the image on the left, that says a lot about being strong in the face of adversity, the things that life throws at us. If you've got a very good picture, you might also see in the waves there, there's actually, some people see the picture of a cat or a face. That's just an interesting aside, not to do with resilience. And then if you look at the picture on the right, that tells us about staying strong, keeping going, noting that other people have taken the same path, that we're not alone. You can see there's other footsteps there, and that we have tools that can help us. And you can see the climber there has got tools. Next slide, please, Catherine. So what we do is we've pulled all those things together from both the theory and things our students have said, and put together these sort of key messages. So resilience is about bouncing back, sort of bouncing back to being yourselves, or maybe even a better version of yourselves, about staying strong like the lighthouse. Looking on the bright side, some people see in that image of the mountain sort of going towards a brighter place. Doing better than you thought you would, and I imagine quite a few of us this year have probably done better than we thought we would. And that it's about nurturing potential. So resilience isn't something you're just born with. And there's a really good but rather complex definition. That's the next thing, please, Catherine. So if you like your complex definitions, if you forward the slide a bit. There we go. There's a very, very complex one. It's an emergent property of hierarchically organized protective systems, and can rarely, if ever, be regarded as intrinsic property of individuals. So that again says we're not born with it. It's stuff we can develop. And when I think of resilience, what I think of is a balloon, a balloon like that. That's your resilience. It's your emotional, psychological, and physical reserves. And the outside pressures can push us in and make our resilience less, but also we can develop things and make our resilience a lot bigger as well. And we're going to be talking about what you can do to increase the size of your balloon. I also thought it would be useful to talk about hard materials. So hard materials like glass aren't resilient. So when I'm thinking about building this barrier or this sort of shield around ourselves, I'm not thinking of something that's really tough like glass. If you try and put a lot of effort into making something really hard, it can shatter, and if it shatters, then you lose all your resilience. Next slide, please. So that's a bit about resilience and compassion. Again, you've got another bit of Latin here. So compassion comes from the Latin, com meaning with, and passion to mean suffer. So I didn't realize passion meant to suffer, but there you go. So compassion means to suffer with. And as with resilience, there's some core commonalities. So when you look at the text on compassion, they normally have three core things. So compassion emphasizes common humanity. We're all here with the experiences that we've had that brought us to this point. It acknowledges the universality of distress. So all of us have difficult things happen to us. We're not human if those things don't happen. There's life just happens. We're all in it together. And it focuses on social relational factors. So compassion is something that's experienced between people. And this quote is a really good quote. It sums it up better than I can. So a basic kindness with deep awareness of the sufferings of oneself and other living things, coupled with a wish and effort to relieve it. And I think that's the other focus. It's that wish and effort to relieve it. So I guess that's difference often between sympathy and empathy. So we might understand what it's like, but it's that wish to relieve someone else's distress that makes compassion. And when we think about compassion, we usually think about it flowing from one person to another. What makes good compassion? Well, it's usually things like wisdom, acting courageously, being warm, being kind, being non-judgmental and accepting. So that's compassion. And next, onto some combinations of the two, some compassion resilience and compassionate resilience. So our work involves us being compassionate to people in very distressing circumstances. That could be our clients, but it can also be our colleagues and our families, or the carers of our clients. And this involves us expending a lot of our psychological and emotional energy. So that's our resilience being used. We're often in touch with other people's distress, but we draw on our own experience of distress. And this, again, reduces the volume of our resilient balloon. And if we keep going, this leaves us with very little reserves for ourselves or the people around us. And this is what's often referred to as compassion fatigue. And there's an increasing awareness of this amongst organisations, so schools, the NHS, the police, the military. They're all looking at building compassion resilience for their staff. So these are things that an organisation can do to support their staff to be more resilient and do their job. So there's obviously a vested interest in them making sure that your compassion is resilient and you can stay there and be compassionate for your work and for yourselves. And then compassionate resilience. Well, compassionate resilience is very slightly different to compassion resilience. So compassionate resilience in this sense I'm talking about today is compassion towards yourself, about being kind to ourselves, and about by doing that we can give ourselves the rest, the resources or the time to increase our resilience. So it's about self-kindness. I think what would be good now is, Catherine, are we able to do the first poll? Okay then, so I hope you'll be able to see a few answers to this poll question. How compassionate would other people say you are to other people? So 0 is zero compassion, 5 is very, very, very compassionate. So we can't see who does what voting. We'll just, everyone can vote and we'll see what the kind of consensus is across all the people who are here today. So I think we've got 59 people. Unfortunately, I can't vote and neither can Catherine. It'll probably take a few seconds for all the votes to register, and then Catherine, I'll let you decide when we've got enough responses in so we can have a look. I'll have a sip of tea whilst you're doing that. So here we go. Well, that's not surprising. I guess people who attend the wellbeing webinars are very likely to be interested in wellbeing and compassion. And if you have a look, we've got a very compassionate bunch of people. We tend towards the very compassionate side of things. That's not surprising and interesting. I'm going to do another quick poll now. So Catherine, if you could do the next poll. And this poll is, how compassionate are you to yourself? Again, we can't see this, so you can be as honest as you'd like to be. And we just sort of summarize the results at the end. Here we go. And look, I think there's been a definite shift towards being less compassionate to ourselves. No 5s this time, so we had quite a few 4s and 5s last time, so only 6% in the 4s and 5s, whereas I think we were around about 60 or 70%. And I don't think it's uncommon for people to find it to be more difficult to be compassionate towards yourselves. It's a pattern that we see across the caring professions, across the military and the police. And in a minute, we'll talk about why that might be difficult. It's also helpful to think about the opposite of self-compassion, which is self-criticism. And that's where we don't allow ourselves to be compassionate or understanding of our thoughts and feelings and experiences, where we don't show that self-kindness, and see what impact that has on us. So if we're less compassionate, what are the implications of that? So Catherine, if you close the poll and advance to the video. So I've got a little YouTube clip on self-compassion here, which looks at what happens if we're not compassionate to ourselves. There's a really irritating wee noise at the beginning, but once you got past that, the first minute of this is very useful.
To survive in this high-pressured, crazy world, most of us have to become highly adept at self-criticism. We learn how to tell ourselves off for our failures and for not working hard or smart enough. But so good are we at this that we're sometimes in danger of falling prey to an excessive version of self-criticism, what we might call self-flagellation, a rather dangerous state which just ushers in depression and underperformance. We might simply lose the will to get out of bed. For those moments, we need a corrective. We need to carve out time for an emotional state of which many of us are profoundly suspicious: self-compassion. We're suspicious because that sounds horribly close to self-pity, but because depression and self-hatred are serious enemies of a good life, we need to appreciate the role of self-care in a good, ambitious, and fruitful life. To this end, we can perform what we've called a self-compassion exercise, a structured meditation lasting 15 minutes or so.
Thank you, Catherine. So, thank you. So, for those that are interested, you can watch the rest of that, and there's a whole bunch of related videos that you'll be linked to that are very informative and also have that strange wee noise at the beginning. Some of you may have found that slightly uncomfortable close to home. And if you did find it sort of uncomfortable and you thought, actually, that could be me, what can you do about it? Well, the obvious answer is try and be kinder to yourself, but that's difficult. And it's quite often difficult because we develop some ways of thinking about ourselves that aren't supportive or critical, and some common blocks to exercising self-compassion. So these are some of the things that people might think. I've got too much to do. I don't have time for that. It's wallowing in self-pity. It's for weaklings. I should be able to cope. It makes you vulnerable. It means not having bad thoughts. It means not taking responsibility. And probably one of the more common ones, it's okay for other people, but I don't deserve it. So it's helpful to realize that we do have this negative or critical part of our brain, and it is helpful in some ways. It helps with our survival or protective. But when it dominates our thinking and our behaviour, it can start to have those negative impacts on our well-being and our mood. Catherine, are we able to go back to the slides, please? This could be one of those strange things where I'm waiting for Catherine or Catherine is waiting. Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. So I've said compassionate resilience is about practicing self-compassion, and that's difficult. But what exactly is self-compassion? Well, this picture is much better explaining it than I can. It normally takes the form of 3 core elements. So the first one is about mindfulness. It's actually being aware when we're stressed or struggling, and doing it in a judgmental or not overreacting kind of way. So that's 2 things it involves: the kind of recognizing it, but also not being judgmental or overreacting. And that's quite difficult. I think lots of us carry on and stop being aware. I said I was going to draw on my own experience. So this year I've lost 2 very close friends, my mother-in-law, and my mother my mother still is very ill with untreatable cancer. And I hadn't realised just how much I was stressed or struggling. And it took quite a lot before I recognised it and was able to do something about it. Self-kindness. So this is actually being supportive and understanding of ourselves when we're having a bad time, and not doing that self-critical thing, not putting up those barriers. As I say, that's easier said than done. We've got those things that are part of our ways of thinking, and some of the work around being more self-compassionate is about recognising those ways of thinking and maybe reframing that kind of thinking. So I know I'm very, very apt to think, I'm strong, I should be able to cope, I can do this, I need to be able to do this for my family. Of course I can cope, I must be able to cope. And then connectedness, and remembering that everyone makes mistakes, and everyone has difficult times. And I think what's really helped me is that I now have a new or newish professional supervisor who is able to admit that mistakes happen with her, and that's helped me to be more able to admit that mistakes happen with me, and it's okay for those things to happen, and we can be kind to ourselves. So simply, self-compassion is acting towards yourself in the same way you would act towards other people when they have a difficult time. And instead of having a stiff upper lip mentality, tell yourself, this is really difficult right now. How can I comfort and care for myself at this time? And I'm sure that's what we tell other people too. Thank you. Yeah, next slide, please, Catherine. So why be self-compassionate? Well, there's lots of research that shows it brings physical and psychological well-being. It increases our resilience, which is why it's in here today, because we're talking about things that will increase our resilience. So it does that. And as this kind of diagrammatic shows, it can increase your happiness, and who wouldn't want that? This is a really helpful infographic, or I don't know what you call it, diagram, by Kristin Neff. And Kristin Neff has got a really good set of resources. So if you want to look her up, there's lots of kindness and self-compassion resources on her website, and it's a really good thing. As you can see there, those three things are still there about self-kindness, our common humanity, and that awareness or mindfulness. And I think it's useful to think about how mindfulness is being used in this circumstance, because mindfulness is a whole breadth of different things. So mindfulness at its basic level is just about being aware of yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your physical being. So it can be that, but mindfulness also refers to the intervention that's run over 8 weeks. So there's a mindfulness course, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and that's something that we're very lucky as staff members having access to through the Sussex Mindfulness Centre and through the Trust intranet. And it was the course that I undertook that really helped with my resilience and well-being this year. So I undertook it, and it gave me the tools to be more aware, open up my thinking around the kinds of ways I'm thinking and were they actually correct, and to be more compassionate to myself. So that's my personal recommendation. Mindfulness, the course is brilliant. Being mindful is just being aware, but being more mindful is a good thing, because when we're more aware, we're more likely to do something about it. Yeah, I saw the thing about Kristin Neff. Yeah, her name's also on this slide here, and I think everyone will get a copy of the slides afterwards. So I've spoken about doing things like a full mindfulness course, and that some of the work about overcoming your barriers to self-compassion can be quite complex. It can be quite difficult because you're thinking about yourself and your thoughts and questioning those. But there are a number of less complex and less challenging and self-directed things that we can do. So next slide, please. Here are other ways, practical ways of trying to increase your resilience. So if there was one other thing I'd really want to point to you, it would be to look at the 5 ways to well-being. The 5 ways to well-being are a very strongly evidence-based set of, well, I'll tell you what, you watch this video and you'll be able to see what it's all about. I apologise, I nicked it from Northamptonshire because it was the shortest one about 5 ways to well-being.
How often do you look after you? It's common to take steps to look after your physical health. This can be anything from exercising, eating well, or even something as simple as brushing your teeth. But when did you last look after your mental well-being? There are 5 steps known as the 5 ways to well-being. Taking these steps and using them in your everyday life is shown to have a positive impact on your mental well-being. While this animation includes suggestions and examples for each step, how you apply them to your life is up to you. So let's take a look at the 5 ways. The first one is connect with those around you. This can be done in so many different ways, but here are just a few examples. You could join a social or sports club, which is a great chance to meet new people. Check in on a relative or a friend. Give them a call or pop round. A chat over a cuppa can go a long way. Number 2 is all about being active in a way that suits you and that you enjoy. You know, sport isn't for everyone, so it's important to find something that works for you. So instead of driving or getting a bus, and if it's possible, why not walk or cycle to your local shop? We have some great country parks in Northamptonshire, so why not visit one on a weekend with your family? Or maybe you could join a family swim club on a weekend. Take notice and be mindful of your surroundings. This is one that many of us are guilty of not doing. Life can be so busy, and taking a moment to engage with everything around you and taking the time to reflect is really important. Mindfulness and meditation are good ways of doing this. Take part in a photo a day challenge. It can even be as simple as asking the question, "Are you okay today?" to a neighbour, relative or colleague. The 4th step is learning new skills and developing yourself. Even though studying a new course or qualification is definitely one to consider, it doesn't always have to be something so big. Going along to a new social or book club with a friend, taking up a new hobby or trying a new cooking recipe are all learning new skills too. Lastly, we have give. This is all about giving what you can, whether it's your time or simply a random act of kindness. Giving isn't just about donating money or fundraising. It can also include giving your time and support by volunteering, helping someone with their shopping, or something as small as holding the door open for someone. Saying thank you can really go a long way too, and that doesn't take much at all. So that's it. The 5 ways to well-being, which you can use in your day-to-day life to help keep your mind healthy. Hopefully along the way you've thought of something already that you can do to make a difference, however big or small it is. So share it with us and make your pledge today. You can do this online, where you'll be able to see other pledges, or like we said, these suggestions may not be right for you, so please do share your ideas too and join in the conversation by using the hashtag. Do share your ideas too and join in the conversation by using the hashtag.
Thank you, Catherine. So as I was saying before, this is really well evidence-based. So the New Economics Foundation did a massive meta-analysis of all the evidence about the stuff that will keep you well and resilient. And it came up with these 5 things: connect, learn, give, take notice, be active. It might not seem like rocket science, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it doesn't work. I think one thing that it's worth noting is you shouldn't travel to Northamptonshire to visit their parks. Probably isn't allowed at the moment. And also that our 5 ways to well-being, we might have lost some of those things during the pandemic response. So our access to some things that keep us well. And I recognise this in myself. So one of the things that used to keep me in a better state with a bigger resilience balloon was swimming. I hadn't realised how much it was important to me until I wasn't able to do it. So we may notice that the pandemic has removed some of our access to things that used to keep us well. So maybe it's about thinking about different things that you can do in a different way and putting those in. So there's different ways of being able to connect. And I know lots of us are connecting like this by video conferencing, and it may not be the thing we naturally fall to, but it does give us connection. There are other resilient techniques as well that we teach on the Resilience in a Nutshell course. We talk about self-soothing. So if you notice yourself becoming agitated or stressed, the things you can do immediately and quickly that may be able to reduce some of that immediate distress. So they include things like building a sensory toolkit. So you can work out for yourself the things that you know make you feel calmer. So it could be a lavender scent, it could be some self-massage, it could be particular things that you look at that are calming. Some people have an object they carry about with them, so they might have a heavy, shiny pebble or something. We also talk about building a sense of belonging. So that's to do with our connectedness. So we do this by thinking about drawing a belonging map. There's an example in a slide later on, and you can see and refer to and look back at your connections and the things that make you feel belonging. And then we talk about the resilience framework and the basics. So the resilience framework is something that's referred to at the end of this. It's a framework that's developed for helping children become more resilient, but applies to all of us. And the thing we take out of it on the course is there are basic building blocks for resilience. So they are having a good enough place to live, a healthy diet, enough sleep, fresh air and exercise, being safe, having enough money, having play and leisure opportunities, being free from discrimination and prejudice. So they're the kind of building blocks that are the foundation for good resilience. It doesn't mean that if you don't have them, you won't have good resilience, but the more you have, the more likely your resilience is going to be greater. And some of those things have been removed for us during the pandemic. And if you haven't got some of those things, acknowledge that. You may not be feeling so resilient because some of these things aren't there, and that's beyond your control. And that's why you see that strange sort of set of circles on the right. One of the things we also teach is recognizing which things are within your control, in your influence, and where you should invest your emotional energy. So those resources within your bubble, there's very little point in exercising those resources and using them up where it's something you have no control or influence about. So that could be, perhaps it could be very noisy neighbours, perhaps it could be the impact of the pandemic, it could be something global. So that's something else we talk about. And a fun thing we do is create a resilient playlist. So all of us at the end of the course contribute a song to the resilient playlist, and you may well have songs that naturally come to you that make you feel resilient. The last one I think I contributed was I Will Survive, and you may think about contributing your own resilient song to me now if you want. I'm happy to receive them by chat. We add them to our playlist. And so that's things you can do to improve some of your resilience. I also spoke about compassion. Can we have the next slide, please? Brilliant. So here are some things that can improve your compassion, but they also improve your resilience as well. There's a great overlap between them too. So some of these things improve both of them, and some of these things improve your well-being. So why not try any of these things? When I talk about compassion breaks, there are a particular style of compassion break that people talk about. So it's a very active, short thing. So if you notice yourself having difficult feelings or being critical, notice when you're doing that. And this is where being more mindful is helpful. So notice when you're doing that and things are getting too much. Pause and then put your hand over your heart, an active movement of putting it over your heart. So it's something that's shown to trigger oxytocin, which is one of those feel-good chemicals. And I seem to remember it's one from pregnancy as well. Not that I know from personal experience, but from my wife's. And then acknowledge your experience. So say something to yourself like, this is hard, this is upsetting, this hurts. And then, may I be kind to myself in this moment? Something that will work for you. Some of these words may feel a bit difficult. Or may I accept myself exactly as I am? Or may I give myself the compassion I need? So that's a compassion break. And there's a link again at the end of here, and you can find out a bit more. And the Kristin Neff web pages also have some things there. Yes, good old Lady Gaga. Thank you for that, that thing there. And then compassion chair or letter writing. These are ways of making you think about your natural compassion and begin to feel what it might be like to apply that compassion to yourself. So it's sort of using imagery or projection and allowing yourself to see your compassionate self and apply it to yourself. And then there's soothing breathing and soothing imagery. A lot of the self-compassion tools, the only way is up, yazoo, brilliant. So a lot of the work around self-compassion recognises we have different systems in our brain, and our fight and flight one can stop us from giving ourselves the things we need, being compassionate to ourselves. It can make us more critical or harsh towards ourselves. So if we're able to dampen down that response, walking on sunshine, that's great. Yeah. So if we can dampen down that kind of fight or flight response through doing some soothing breathing or some soothing imagery, or maybe those sensory things I spoke about earlier, that will put us in a better place to, I'm going to stop being distracted by all the songs coming through. It will put us in a better place to be more kind to ourselves. And again, with posture, you'll see some compassionate postures. So there's a way of sitting and being which will make you feel more at ease. It will reduce your sympathetic and nervous system's response to something you might find is difficult. And then there's self-affirmation, and the belonging map fits into this kind of thing. So self-affirmation is about recognizing you are compassionate and you are a good person, and recognizing the things you've done that are helpful and good. And the belonging map can have some of those things. So you can see on there, people have got, maybe it's a card that someone sent you that says something nice about you. We also had a student who had a compassion jar. So anytime anyone said something nice, whether it was sort of an email or some other way, she put it on a post-it note and then put it in her jar, and then she could dip into her jar and pull out a post-it and remind herself of the good things about herself. The next two three-letter acronyms, CBT and CFT, you may have heard of. So cognitive behavioural therapy and compassion-focused therapy. They're two similar but slightly different ways of increasing your ability to be compassionate through challenging the thinking that makes it difficult to do that. So challenging those negative thoughts, the I don't deserve it, I'm not good enough, those kinds of thoughts that you have. And these tend to be usually courses of 8 or 12 weeks, and they require a bit more dedication, but they bring greater results. They are worth investing in, and you can normally access these through your IAP services, and that's your increasing access to psychological therapy. So your GP will be able to refer you for these. And there's hundreds of books on CBT, there's eCBT, so there's lots of resources about it, but the courses have got a good evidence base behind them. Yoga is good for everything. There's a link in the next in the resources email. Yoga is fantastic for all sorts of things, and we're very lucky as a trust to be able to access free yoga sessions. Now I'm going to remember, can't remember what they're called. Is it NHS Fit? So if you look on your Wellbeing Wednesday email, there's a link to our an organisation that provides free classes, not only yoga, there's other physical exercise classes, things you can do with kids. And so yoga is very good for mindfulness, for resilience, and the breathing techniques are really helpful for soothing your sympathetic nervous system. And mindfulness, doing our bit, thank you, that's what they're called. So you can find them through the internet or through your Wellbeing Wednesday email. And the final thing is mindfulness. So as I said, mindfulness is a number of things. You can find mindfulness books. You can look on the internet and find mindful practices. The thing that is proven to work is the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course that I spoke about. And as I say, you can access that too through our trust. And we also have a mindfulness drop-in that you're able to access. So that's my personal recommendation, is 5 Ways to Wellbeing and mindfulness will be brilliant for you. But all these other things might appeal to you too, and may take a bit less in terms of commitment. So I think that is the end of my whistle stop tour. Can I have the next slide, please? And we usually finish our resilience course with this quotation, and it pulls together the things we've been talking about. So be strong enough to stand alone. So this is about having resilience enough to be able to stand alone, smart enough to know when you need help. And this is about your awareness. So you're aware that things are getting difficult. So being that aware that you can ask for help, and then brave enough to ask for it. As I say, it is difficult to ask for help, even of yourself, and maybe asking it of yourself is one of the more difficult things. So that is it. That's my whistle-stop tour of all things resilient and compassionate. Here are some useful resources for you. There's some hyperlinks in there. I'm very happy for you to contact me directly by email if you want to talk more about this. And I hope you take away the key messages. We are all resilient. We are all deserving of our own compassion. And resilience and compassion are things that we can grow through small steps and sometimes bigger steps. Thank you. That's me done.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. Thank you. It's absolutely
Pleasure.
Fascinating. And as someone's just put in the chat, well needed this morning. So I really hope everyone appreciated and enjoyed and took something from that session, as I'm sure everyone will. And great that it's recorded so we can send it around to people who couldn't make today. So thank you very much. And I will email the recording and all the things that we've talked about today. So thank you. Bye.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, everybody. Cheerio.